welcome everybody to another Scottish Property Podcast live event. It's the Monday night, first Monday of every month we're doing these. We've been going around the whole of Scotland, pretty much touring every city, doing a focus specifically on the location. Tonight we are talking about Dundee, the Dundee property market. I think we're guilty a lot of times just focusing on the central belt, so Glasgow, Edinburgh, but we like to get out and about around the country, see what's happening. So we've got a great panel of guest speakers on tonight. So delighted to be joined with Kessar Salimi, who's going to give us a wee mortgage update. Kessar, say hello.
Hi everyone. Thanks Nick for having me on, Stephen as well. It's great to be on and great to be talking about Dundee.
Thanks for joining us, mate. I know you're excited to talk about Dundee tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I'm always talking about mortgages, so it's going to be good to talk about actually my own investing, Dundee as well. So yes, looking forward to it.
Kessel's wearing two hats tonight. He's going to give us a wee mortgage update right at the start. He's also going to tell us about his own investing and portfolio building that he takes on in Dundee. So that'll be good to get a bit of insight there. We also have Jack Reavley. Hello, Jack. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening, guys.
Just give us a little background. What do you do yourself, and just give us a wee introduction.
I've came to Dundee in '93 and bought my first property in '99, and now I've built up a letting agency called Easylets and manage about 750 properties in Dundee.
Cool. Look forward to hearing from you. That'll be great. And we've got Arshad Ali. Hello, Arshad.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Stephen, Kessar, and the rest. Great to be back.
What are you going to be talking about today, my man?
So tonight we'll be talking about everyone's favourite subject, EPCs, change in regulation, why they're important to you, and also what to look out for from an investor's point of view.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Stephen Clark, you're going to be keeping an eye on the chat and chipping in with the questions.
Yeah, I'm hoping people have got questions. If anyone's got any questions for any of the guest speakers tonight, put on the chat and I'll ask your questions as we go along. And if you want to share your stories at the end, please as well put in the chat and we'll get you on at the end as well.
Okay, so it's been a busy old month, guys. The property market is still motoring. There's no signs of it slowing down at all. We even into our second lockdown, things are still steaming ahead. Halifax released their monthly Halifax price index, and we're looking at the figures here. In fact, I'll just share it on my screen now, give you a wee look. This is data from the whole of the UK. This is not based on house sale prices. This is based on the mortgage market. So Halifax Lender, they've come out with the figures and they've said annual change of 7.6% up annually from last year. So things really still boosting along there. And, there's no signs of things easing off at all, in fact. And if you look at it from June, it says the strongest growth since June 2016. If you look at a period of between, I think it's from June through to November, the strongest rise since June 2016, basically. So things, it'd be interesting to hear about how you guys are getting on in the market. Is anybody picking up deals? And we would love to hear from you. Stick it in the chat and we'll take some questions at the end as well. So let me figure out how to stop sharing that. Yeah, so things really difficult still with the economy. And Kessar, let's just have a wee chat about the mortgage market then. What is happening? Give us the update.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. A lot of things have been happening recently and it's all good news. So 90% lending is definitely coming back. A lot of residential lenders doing it now. Halifax, Nationwide, Virgin, Yorkshire Building Society, and a lot of the smaller building societies as well. But the mainstream ones, Halifax and Nationwide bringing them back, and Halifax just in the last week is just fantastic news. So that's going to kind of push on that side of the residential market and the sales market. Apart from that, we've seen kind of buy-to-let products get expanded as well. Precise brought back the bridge to let product, which is a fantastic product, but quite not that great for Scottish property investors because the minimum loan size is 100k. But what I do think it is kind of bringing back competition into the market, and that will help bring other lenders start to bring like the bridge to let products back and the more sort of complex products back. Apart from that, we've seen 80% loan to value products coming back as well. So a couple of lenders are doing 80% loan to value on buy to let. Just today, another one got announced. It's down in England, but again, I think that's good news, and that will start to bring competition in. Lenders starting to reduce rates as well. Like TMW recently really hiked their rates up. We did a couple of mortgages, got the mortgage offers through, and then they actually reduced their rates. So we've managed to actually, a couple of clients have managed to save 20 quid off a month, because we managed to get their offers changed to a lower rate again. So all in all, lenders are starting to get back on top of their workload. And, initially they didn't want the work because they were so busy anyway. Now that they're starting to get on top of the workload, we're starting to see them getting more competitive. As potentially the stamp duty sort of holiday finishes in March/April time, we might see more and more competitive start to come back on, especially on the buy to let, and we might start to see more products. And they're already talking about easing criteria January with a lot of the sort of lenders as well. So overall, good news.
Couple of things I want to ask you. Did you hear the one about the self-employed? Are they still having problems? Because there was something about if you took the self-employed help from the government, then there was certain lenders, I don't know if it was NatWest or Nationwide, one of them was like basically black marking you for taking the help.
Yeah, on buy to let as well. So, definitely on the residential side of things, and especially with this latest one, the SEISS grant, if you take that, you're actually taking a box saying that you definitely have been physically, what's the word I'm looking for? Like affected by COVID financially, sorry. But yeah, that was unfortunate on, the buy to let side of things. Somebody got rejected on a mortgage when it comes to, because they took the grant. But in general, most of the lenders are basing it on the rentals. So it's not a huge thing for buy to let. On the residential side, yeah, it definitely still is a thing. Yeah.
What's the latest with bounce back loans, by the way? There was talk of obviously lenders asking you in the criteria or asking you the question, but have you had any kind of like anybody get knocked back or anything like that for taking a bounce back loan?
No, so we've got lots of clients that have taken out bounce back loans. Clients that have taken out bounce back loans in the limited company that they're actually buying a property in as well. But we're just having to be open and upfront with the lenders, just let them know, look, the client's taking a bounce back loan. Sometimes they're asking for a proof of funds. They just want to make sure that the funds are separate to what they're using for the deposit. Solicitors as well are really looking into it as well. So even if you've got, say, 3 months clear bank statements, you go try getting a mortgage. When it comes to the solicitors, they're asking for like full business bank statements going back to March as well. So to make sure where the funds have come from, but nobody specifically getting kind of penalized for taking a bounce back loan, just as long as you're upfront about it.
Cool. And I read that obviously like mortgage lending's like at its highest, like their highest rate in like since like 2007 or something like that. The amount of mortgages that are putting out, but it seems like there's still quite a lot of people getting knocked back or the criteria is getting tightened. So like it just shows you the demand is still like huge, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And lenders really struggled with that demand, and they're kind of working not at full capacity because they're all working from home too. But the good thing is, I think we're kind of getting to that sort of the top of the peak there, and it is starting to cool down a little bit. Lenders are starting to get more in control of the amount of volume that's coming through. And with that, we should start to see more lenders ease criteria, because we have seen some silly sort of decisions being made by underwriters recently and stuff like that, clients getting knocked back, that sort of stuff. So hopefully less of that will happen going forward.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. And as always, guys, if there's any questions for Kessar on the mortgage side of things, then please stick them in the chat box. We'll happily get to them later on. Look forward to hearing from you later on, Kessar, about your Dundee property investing and how you invest in that market. So we'll bring you back later, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, so guys, we're going to move on to Arshad Ali next, who's going to give us a little chat about EPCs. So welcome Arshad on.
So Nick, thank you very much, everybody. Nick, could you either make me co-host or allow me to share my screen, please?
Certainly can. Hang on a sec.
Thank you.
There you go, sir.
Cheers. So I'll start off with a couple of, can you see my screen just now? Yeah?
Yep.
Brilliant. So I'll start off with a couple of websites to begin with for everybody, and then I'll move into the main presentation just because it happens to be open in front. So you can search for an EPC for any property in Scotland if it's digital. Essentially on here, Scottish EPC register and Energy Saving Trust, search EPC by. Now, all EPCs have RRN code or by postcode, that would be, I'm just waiting for that to load. And accept, you have to accept the terms. And then you would put in domestic for a house, the postcode, refresh, and then it'll bring up a list. The other site I'd like to kind of share with you is the Home Energy Scotland. So this is where you can apply for funding, which I'll talk about a bit later on with regards to the improvements that you can make from the property. So can you, everybody see that presentation?
Yep.
Brilliant. So tonight, Energy Performance Certificate, or as everybody calls it, EPC. A lot of the times it's tacked on to a home report. You don't bother looking at it because you're really wanting to know what the valuation was on the home report and when it was given and what kind of construction. But this is also important with regards to your future, especially if you want to become a buy-to-let landlord. Now, the regulations are coming in force on 1st of April 2021. They were meant to be a bit earlier. However, due to COVID, they've been pushed back. And they're also being amended to what was originally proposed. So now there's a move to remove the E standard. I'll explain what that is when we go into an actual EPC, what that means if you're not sure. And also EPCs of D, from any change of tenancy after 1st of April 2020, from 2022, they'll also get, that'll be the grading, they'll be getting removed as well. So all rental properties must have an EPC rating of D by 31st of March 2025. So when you're doing your refurbishments, when you're spending all that money, this is something to bear in mind. And I'll also give you a couple of tips on how to be efficient with regards to where you focus your energy on with regards to getting bang for your buck. Now, there are exemptions, you'll be glad to know. So if it's just not feasible, if it's not practical to carry out the improvements, but this will have to be kind of proven. Also, if the other owners in the flat refuse to consent, so not necessarily the work inside your flat, but the works in the common parts of the building. So if you don't get agreement by everybody else, then that's exemption. Also, when the actual tenant refuses consent for work, which beggars belief a little bit, because you'd think you'd want to get the most energy efficient home that you can because it saves you money in heating. But there we go. And where permission for a listed or a conservation area can't be obtained, that's with a lot of things when we're in the property world. If you can't get the permission, then that's understandable. And also where the costs of improvements exceed £10,000. Now, it sounds like I'm scaring you. Don't worry, there is funding available. So landlords will only be required to carry out work if it can be financed by means of funding provided by a grant or loan from Scottish ministers. And the website I showed you at the beginning is the the loan is called the Private Rented Sector Landlord Loan, which is interest-free for those with 5 or fewer properties, or at an interest rate of 3.5% for those with larger portfolios. So that's still, competitive or free. So you do have funding in order to carry out these improvements. So when you get your home report, typically you get an energy performance certificate, especially in Scotland. This is the first page, so you can see the dwelling type, when it was carried out, also a rough floor size and an indicator of the heating system there. If you're looking at the signs at the side, you can see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G being the worst and A being the best. So this report overall is saying that this property right now, the current level is 64, which is a level D. However, with the improvements it's suggesting to you, you can make it a level B, which is 84. And here's some of the things that would be suggested in the report. So they're saying if you increase the loft insulation to 270mm thickness, it'll cost you roughly £100 to £350. And on average, it will save you £138 over 3 years. If you went for cavity wall insulation, it'll cost you £500 to £1,500. And over 3 years, it'll save you £500. Floor insulation, £800 to £1,000, which will save you roughly £200 over 3 years. Now, you have to bear in mind, this isn't, everything's not just about how much it will save you money. It's all about improvement to the environment, energy efficiency. So there's more than just and the world that you want to leave your children, so to speak. This part of the report covers where it's at just now. So the star rating, very poor, that's least efficient. 2 stars is poor, 3 stars is average, 4 stars is good, and 5 stars is very good. So you can see here, the lighting is very good. So that's a quick win for most people. So when you are going to get an assessment, make sure you've got energy efficient lighting. And you can see here, the walls are not so efficient. You know, they're poor rated. The mains heating. So the other thing is the main heating controls. If you don't have controls, then it makes it harder to adjust the temperature, which means that there's heat loss. So you can see how that follows through. That's something relatively easy to look into and look after when you're installing the heating system, is to get some kind of control or timer along with the TRVs, which are the controls at the bottom of the radiator. So going back into the energy cost for this home. So what that details is how much it's costing over 3 years, and also what the potential energy cost would be. So once again, it's more indicative of the savings that over 3 years it would be. So in total, they're saying if you implemented everything that they said in the report, you could save roughly £900 over 3 years. Now, this is, as an investor, this is quite an important piece, because what it tells you is the differential it would make after improvement. So you can see how initially, let me just quickly take you back. It's, you know, current rating is band D64. But here you can see the difference that each of these makes with regards to the energy efficiency. So here you could spend £500 and take it up to a C, or you can spend £4,000 and take it up to a C. So if you're smart about it, you'll pick the right things that are cost efficient, that'll get you to the upper band if money is an issue, or if you're trying to be, you know, you're doing it in phases, so to speak, the improvements. So I would typically start with something that gives me the most bang for its buck. And here, you know, as I say, the cost is for cavity wall insulation, 500 to 1,000, and takes you up to C. Whereas if I went for solar water heating, you can see the logic there. And also here, you've got sort of floor insulation, takes you to C. Now, that's a whistle-stop tour of the EPC. I could go on and I'd bore you.
No, please don't. That's fine.
Exactly. So I just wanted to kind of give you a whistle-stop tour, because it's something that can easily be overlooked, but it's very important with regards to if you want to continue to be a buy-to-let landlord. And if you do want to know more, there's my contact details. I'll also drop them into the chat so that you can connect on my socials and you know, either pick my brain there, or if you want to ask questions just now, you can do as well.
A couple of questions flying in already. By the way,
something I've ignored as well over the last few years. Just as Ashad says, you look at the kind of the important parts of the home report and kind of miss out the EPC section. But the first few purchases I made in Aberdeen were flats, like traditional granite flats with electric heating, sash case windows in a listed area, and I was starting to kind of panic, thinking, shit, am I going to have issues with the EPC ratings coming down? But your slides kind of showed that there's probably quite a few exemptions that I would get away with.
No, listen, it's not the most exciting topics, but absolutely hats off for explaining that really well, Asha. And it's really, really important, because I think that obviously it was stalled for a while there, wasn't it? It was supposed to come in last year. And as you said in your slides, it's now coming in from April 2021. But originally I thought it was going to be minimum E, and now they've changed it to minimum D.
Yes, I think, well, it's that drive and that push, isn't it? And also, you know, part of me is like, well, it's the planet, what is a planet you're going to leave your children, kind of thing. So I really struggle to, for me personally, it's a case of it needs done, it's more energy efficient, it's more environmentally efficient, and there's funding for it. So there's no real reason not to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was looking through the portfolio of the Lets, and there's a lot actually that are in E's and a few F's as well. So it's something that landlords really going to need to look out for. Potentially going to cost a bit of money in the future to get up to standard. So really appreciate that. There's a couple of questions flying in. Stephen, what should we do with the questions? Should we bank them up for the end, just so we can get?
Yeah, we can ask them as we go, especially on the topic would be good, I think.
Oh, as we go, right? Okay, so we missed out Kesar's, but we'll maybe come back to Kessar after his presentation. But
so Jim Parker's asking, is there any free money for EPC improvements?
Yes, the funding, the loans.
You touched on that in your presentation there, didn't you?
Yeah, so I'll also drop in so a man that's prepared, I'll drop in the link for you just now.
Is it not Energy Saving Trust? Is that not the website where you get all the grants and all that and the funding?
There you go, it's in the chat box just for you, Jim.
Next up, Neil Robb, why is there such an issue if storage heaters are not fitted with EPC rating? Anybody got any experience with that? Storage heaters are not fitted with EPC rating? Not sure about that one.
Yes, I'm not sure of the question there. Sorry.
All right. Okay.
Is that because, Neil? Is that because of the energy efficiency of the storage heaters? You're meaning?
Yeah. What I've been told is, if you don't have storage heaters in, and you replace them with electric panel heaters, there is no rating in the system, so you'll get a 0 rating for having central heating. You know, the storage heaters are the only recognised ones within the EPC system, but you hear people putting in infrared panels, other type panels and stuff, especially in older buildings. It might be different in newer buildings where it's all well insulated, but basically I've been having this sort of on and off for the last, I've got one flat with electric storage heaters. I've now got 2, funny enough. One I can put gas in, but the other one, and I keep saying, because I've seen so many people do developments in England, take out the storage heaters, put in the panel heaters, and then not get a rating because the EPC system won't recognise them, and then they have to redo it.
Yeah, so with regards to that, Neil, that obviously that's a flaw in the system because you know what is energy efficient and what isn't. However, because their system, what the background system technically can't handle, or that's not a drop-down box they can select, therefore you're getting unfairly punished for it. So the only way around it would have to be either sort of campaigning towards your local MP, raising it through either SAL and also sort of complaints commission. That's a lot higher level than you probably want to get involved. But currently, if the system's not set up for it, unfortunately, there has to be a groundswell of opinion to try and move it. And hopefully in time, they will update the system to incorporate that.
I believe there is a certain make and model of a electric storage heater that you can replace it with. It's a energy efficient one that's got apps that you can control the heating with, but it has to be actually on the system that it qualifies for it, because you can get electric storage heaters or panel heaters that are like cheap eBay kind of 40 quid ones. Because my letting agent, maybe I'll ask Jack when he comes on, but my letting agent had recently told me when I was refurbing a flat with electric heating that it had to be a certain make and model to get the EPC rating down.
I think there's going to be a lot of scratching of heads when this legislation kicks in, and from 2025 as well, gas boilers are going to be banned from properties as well. Well, I think it's possibly new builds properties, yeah. So there's a lot going to be happening over the next 10 years with all this stuff. Like you, Arshad, totally agree. It needs to happen, obviously, because we're just wasting away. But it's going to be a big adjustment. Pete Harding, Pete has asked a question. How can you prove you've done cavity wall insulation or floor insulation?
Pictures, photography, get someone reliable, say like a local agent or your builder or someone. It's like you do for your investor packs. It's like you do for when developers, they document, they take pictures, they get proof.
Invoices, receipts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that as well.
Cool. Right, no bother. Gillian, yeah, that's a comment and a couple more comments. Thanks, guys. That's brilliant. Arshad, top man. Cheers. Very well done. Thanks very much. Let's move it along, guys. We're going to go right into Dundee and we're going to focus on our location of the month, which is Dundee. Really excited to talk about this because last month we did Aberdeen, a lot of opportunities up there, and I hear that Dundee is doing really well too. So it'll be interesting to hear from Jack and Kessar. I'd like to welcome Jack Reavley onto the event, please. Thanks, Jack. If you can say hello.
Hi, good evening. Thanks very much for having us.
Great stuff. So you're going to give us a wee presentation, give us a few slides and all that, and talk about the Dundee market. But well, I think I'll just let you do that first of all, and then we can sort of dive into a few questions and get a bit of chat going. Is that cool?
Absolutely, yeah. I had a quick chat with Kessar, who's also covering Dundee tonight, and I know that he was going to cover some of the pros and cons of Dundee. So I'll maybe not try and mow his grass, other than just to say that the points about the university and the V&A and so on, it's certainly been on and up for some time. And as I say, I'll let Kessar cover those, the good
Cool.
general points of Dundee.
Do you want to share your screen?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just.
So Jack's a letting agent in Dundee, Easylets, I believe it's called. First time we've met, Jack, so really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having us. Yeah, so I'll just get started. Yeah, I've been, as I said earlier, I've been in the Dundee property market now for over 20 years. I've got my own portfolio of property, but obviously realised the benefit of a regular income. So I started managing other people's properties some time ago.
It's all right. You can take that. It'll be a burst pipe.
With 750 properties, Jack's got somebody managing that part.
Well, true. Definitely way above my level yet.
I am on out of hours call. Believe it or not, I'm sitting in the office here, and that was an out of hours call. I've just diverted it, so got a new phone system that rings everywhere. So sorry about that. Yeah, we'll continue. So yeah, I'm just going to go over some current property investment opportunities we've got in Dundee. Try and do a little bit of some rental statistics. It's been obviously, as everyone knows, it's been a crazy year and a difficult year to get any sort of meaningful representation of any statistics. Never mind trying to get them on a pie chart. And again, just finally, just maybe try and give Dundee some seller points. I'm not from Dundee myself, but I do find myself constantly defending it over the years from when I first came up here in '93. But it's certainly, I think on the map now, everybody's, aware of it as a good investment city with the universities and so on. So we obviously have our portfolios, maybe student and university type accommodation. We've got just under 200 HMOs. I know there'll be a lot of chat and conversations about what makes a good investment and where would you invest your money. Half of my own portfolios, students and HMOs as well. So a good mix works for me. So here's just a typical current couple of 2 HMO properties that we have in the market. I've just picked them because one's a new build and one's a typical tenement block, which obviously we have a lot of in Dundee. Just some figures up there with some yields. They're based on a 12-year rental, which is a 12-month rental, which is quite hard to achieve now with the PRT lease, certainly with some of the bigger HMO properties and the bigger student properties as well. But there's obviously got to make allowance in there if you use a management agency or HMO fees and repairs and so on. The other thing that Ash had covered well is the consideration of investing in the older tenement style properties in Dundee is the EPC ratings. So they're good, really good high yielding properties there, but they come with the risks of the type of management that's required to look after them, which I'll maybe try and cover later on. The next 2 properties again are just typical 2-bedroom properties, quite city centre. Both available to students and professionals. The more of a conservative investment, safer in terms of risk averse and sellability. If you had to move the property on, there's a broader market would be looking for that property as opposed to just purely property investors, the first time buyer, and other people would be interested in these properties as well. So I'll not try and go into detail with them. I know you're pressed for time and so on, but just typical. Kessar has some other types of properties to discuss later in the broader parts and other parts of Dundee. But these are 2, 4 quite centrally based properties that I've shown you, just based around the sort of geographical nature of Dundee, with the 2 universities being quite central, based in the city centre. It makes it quite a campus-orientated city, and location is key to any sort of market that you're buying in, whether it be the university or Nine Wells or what have you. So as I said earlier, it's been an unusual year, as you discussed at the beginning of the conversation. This is just I tried to get some meaningful representation and to show sort of areas and what type of properties and what risks come with them. You'll see here at the start of the months pre-lockdown, we had quite a consistent year. The yellow columns are obviously the properties that are notices are received, and the grey towers are let. So quite a good consistency throughout the year. April, May, June, we were absolutely decimated with the number of student properties we have with the notices to quit with the PRT lease. But obviously with the notice and universities shut, we had a lot of notices to quit. But the thing, particularly in Dundee and across Scotland, it was really encouraging and good to see how quickly everything bounced back. July, August, we almost got, well, we've got all the properties re-let. Some of these figures are quite staggering considering we have 750 properties in our portfolio, but the towers in July and August that were re-let properties, within there's tenant changeovers. We've also got one student block that's about 40 properties that changes over. So I think people looking to invest and with ups and downs and so on, and you couldn't have considered or taken account for the lockdown situation. But as I say, we bounced back, and I think there's probably between 150 and maybe 200 additional changeovers or void tenancies we had due to the lockdown, maybe tenancies that wouldn't normally have handed in their notice. So that's something to consider.
Is that a large part of the students then just getting up and just disappearing?
Absolutely, yeah. The university's closed. It was their second home as such. The parents maybe were saying, they can't justify that. And yeah, I mean, we allow for some void periods throughout the summer anyway, but it was significantly earlier this year and a lot more. We had, as I say, we probably had about 150 to 200 extra changeovers that we normally wouldn't have in a calendar year.
How many universities have you got in Dundee?
There's two. There's Abertay and Dundee University. There's Dundee College as well.
Right,
but yeah, so the rental market is propped up by the university, and the students. We do miss the, in comparison to Edinburgh and Glasgow, we do miss the white collar recent graduates who are quite keen to live in the city centre, that'll live with each other before they decide where they're going to move to and rent a property. That's the one area of the Dundee market that we lack. We've got the professional, the private, we've got the housing benefits and so on, and the university, but that is the one area of the market that we.
You think that'll change, Jack, with the new infrastructure that's getting invested in Dundee City Centre?
I certainly hope so. I mean, some of the figures and some of the areas that I maybe recommend later is quite city centre based. I mean, COVID aside, which is just you couldn't allow for Debenhams and so on. Dundee is a very infrastructure is good, the train line and so on, and location of it. Obviously, the big talking point was the V&A. And we're yet to fully see the benefit of the V&A. I know there's a lot of hotels and so on built.
What's that? Sorry, Jack. What's the
V&A? The Victoria and Albert Museum that's built on the River Tay, that was opened just over a year ago.
Okay.
So that was really the fear was that it would bring day trip people in from Perth on the train or from Edinburgh or airport and so on. The reality is, they're trying to encourage people to come to Dundee to stay for a number of days. But the impact of the V&A in that area that the council have developed around the waterfront and the right up the waterfront to City Quay, which is a great area to buy in at the moment, is that they were hoping that it would make it quite a cosmopolitan, vibrant, bouncing place. And the encouragement would be that answering your question, Stephen, that the companies, solicitors and accountants and these sort of companies that traditionally have sort of moved away from the city centre because of parking, would come back and migrate some of the buildings that are yet to be built around that area that they're finishing off. So, as an opportunity, that might be, it's still happening there. The V&A, the waterfront, when you come over the bridge, the city centre is just, a 9 away from it. And then you've got the City Quay, which was developed about 10, 15 years ago. So that whole area, they're trying to make it the Canary Wharf of Dundee, as it were. And hopefully it'll materialise.
Interesting. We'll let you get on. Sorry, keep going with your slides. I went off.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So this is to try and give you an idea of a breakdown by the area. This is our own figures from our lets. So I say it's such an unusual year. You take out the city centre and the West End, which are those student properties that I was talking about earlier, and to move away from the students and the universities in Dundee and focus on some of the other areas which are extremely good opportunities and rental properties and all of them really. It shows a lot more consistency. Hilltown and Stobswell maybe slightly less desirable in terms of the style of property there, but still some good opportunities and good investments. A lot of tenement properties in those two areas and in the DD2 and DD4, the Stobswell and Hilltown. But the rest of them, we still do have a lot of properties in Broughty Ferry, and only to have 13 change over in the year shows the consistency and the people want to stay there, and saw it right through the lockdown and all those areas. So yeah, Hilltown and Stobswell, we've got a large number of properties in there that great investment areas, but again, the style and nature of the properties, it's quite easy to find an alternative, another property that's similar, so people maybe move on there more than they did. The two other big towers, obviously, are the city centre and the West End, which we covered just a bit earlier there.
So is there anything I should be avoiding then in Dundee? Any kind of dodgy areas or streets or locations?
No, I think it's difficult to say. We've got property on almost most streets in Dundee, so it comes without being giving you a sort of a politician's answer. If you buy smart in the right area and at the right price, every street in every area is a good opportunity. I mean, there is certain things. Baxter Park Terrace is always an example I give. It's a really good street. Looks onto obviously Baxter Park. You get some there's some nice rentals there, some good property. But just a couple of streets behind it, there's some less desirable streets. So you could be thinking you're buying, you recommend it near Baxter Park, and you're just a street away, and you land in the wrong square, as it were. So again, just check with local knowledge, check with an estate agency or ourselves, and would keep you right.
And any regions or any areas where you think might have the potential for sort of regeneration and capital growth increase, anything out of that list?
Yeah, well, I mean, and good covering some of the sort of points I was going to make at the end. I think the key thing to me that's made Dundee for me such a good investment city is sort of consistency, and consistency without inflated house prices. It's never gone crazily high. So and with interest rates being low, and there always been a base good rental market there. There's in terms of regeneration in areas that are coming good. The sort of the east side of the city centre, for the reasons I sort of mentioned earlier. Dundee sort of ring fenced by obviously by the Kingsway, but out with that's where they're sort of developing the new housing. There's a lot of Kirkwood, Miller, these sort of people are building houses, and maybe 10 years ago that was done on the Broughty Ferry side of Dundee. Just recently, there's been a lot of planning permission allowed on the west side of Dundee. Springfield, there's a big development up there. They tend to be bought up by first-time buyers or families and so on, but that might drag people out that way if they start bringing in shops and gyms and stuff to facilitate schools to facilitate those new houses. Then the Charleston, Minas Hill, those sort of west side areas of Dundee, they might pick up, become regenerated. I mean, they don't need it's not being geography saying they need regenerated, but they might pick up other benefits from being buying in those sort of areas. And obviously it's very near Ninewells, those areas, the Charleston, Minas Hills, that sort of area, the South Road.
Ninewells is the hospital, right?
Ninewells is the main. That's affiliated with, it's obviously a main hospital, but it's also affiliated with the university. So it's a big medical university, and Ninewells is the centre to that. So again, that gives a lot of good quality investment and rentals and tenants and so on.
Good man.
Just a quick one. You obviously all know about Citylets. That was obviously the go-to for statistics for the if you're looking back over years. I'll not go into it too much with Citylets. It's somewhere we refer to every now and again. But the interesting point, to contradict what I was saying slightly before, I had a look at this, and the only thing that I can really see on here, well, two things really, is just to back up the consistency that I was talking about Dundee, which to me is what makes it such a good city to invest in. But secondly, the city centre is the only actual area that the yields have started to fall sort of consistently since 2015. And even though we're promoting it as a good place to invest, and there's some of the properties I used at the beginning there are examples I still would myself. But the only answer I can give to that is there's a serious amount of property in Dundee above the shops and above the all the businesses in Dundee that are slowly getting converted into student accommodation or into flats. There's a lot of Airbnb property that's being converted there as well, with the V&A nearby. And it might just be that that's starting to get saturated with the prices staying the same, but the rent's not going up accordingly. But still, I would be highly recommend the city centre. But just an interesting point to contradict what I was saying.
You talked about Airbnbs there. That's obviously interesting what's happening all over in cities at the moment with Airbnbs. We talked about this right at the start of lockdown, and we thought we might see a lot of landlords switching their Airbnb properties back to long-term lets. Have you had anybody come to you back with their properties that they want to go back to the traditional?
Yeah, I think not massively. I mean, Airbnb has obviously suffered because within the city centre itself, or the Dundee city, there's not the sort of holiday opportunities you might get in Edinburgh and St Andrews with the golf and the festival. But the Airbnb was still a massive thing, in Dundee when it came in. We didn't get overly involved apart from when the golf was in St Andrews. But yeah, there's slowly people, going back for those, again, consistent rents that you get from the long-term rentals. The other interesting one is service apartments. They're extremely popular in Dundee, and there's such a grey area. There's no defined boundaries between Airbnb and service apartments and the new PRT lease. They're almost merging into, they're quite similar. And the council are always on the case looking for Airbnb landlords that are potentially getting around HMO regulations and so on. So I'm sure you talked about the regulations tightening up, but yeah, we have had, it's not as a buzz thing as it was a few years ago, with the lockdown. It certainly limited the number of people that can use them, with salesmen and other business people not traveling as much. They're not getting used, conferences being cancelled and so on. So we certainly have had, some landlords that have, come back from the Airbnb product and long-term rentals.
And have you seen has there been any problems or any trends veering away from the student HMOs, with some people obviously worried about mixing with other people within HMO properties? Like, has there been any issues there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's explanation for some of those tall towers I showed in the first graph with the city centre, I think, and ultimately with the new PRT lease, it's easier for them to hand in notice, and so the bigger multiple occupancies, the 5 and 6 bedrooms, were definitely affected the worst, just with the difference in people's opinion on what they had to do, whether they had to live in groups or they felt safe living in groups. But the biggest thing to that, just being open about the HMOs and scenario, which is a big part of our business, and to be frank about it, since the lockdown and the students came back in the droves, which is really encouraging. They want to get away from lockdown and their parents probably, and they want to come and have some kind of university life, as limited as it could be. But they did come in smaller groups. We did see a trend that it was easier for them to get together, Facebook or however they're communicating, and to get together, and they definitely started looking for smaller flats now than as opposed to the 5 and 6 bedroom. Just even doing a viewing was more difficult. We were to get the groups together to sign a lease. So absolutely. I mean, I'm confident. I'm hoping that trend will change next year, and we'll be back to normal by September next year, if all goes well with the vaccination and so on. Which I know is not the focus this evening, but 100% it would be true to say that the bigger HMOs certainly suffered more for the very reason you're saying, and just for the practicalities of them.
Well, just like in the student market in general, I mean, you hear like down in England and all that, they're having these big, the university accommodation, they're having like rent strikes and all that, or the students are getting together in the student halls and stuff like that, and it's crazy what's going on. And obviously with the online learning and students not having to come in for classes and all that market, I don't deal with the student market much, but I don't know, if I was investing in student HMOs and all that, I'd be a bit worried, but obviously hope it, like you say, hope it will come back. If you were coming into Dundee and you wanted to invest in Dundee right now, where would you put your money? What market would you be looking at? Would you be buying something like a 3-bed terraced house, or would you be buying a 2-bed flat in the city centre? Where do you think the best return on investment would be?
Yeah, well, I think still yield wise, you can't in Dundee with the I say the campus, you can't go away from, you can't knock the university, the students, the HMO. They by far still performing even throughout this year with the yield, the void periods they've had, they're still giving the best returns. If depending how risk averse you are and so on, absolutely the desirability now for 2, 2.5, 3-bedroom terraced or detached houses from I mentioned Venus Hill, Charleston, St Mary's, Kirkton, these sort of the areas just within the Kingsway, they very good. They're the one that's had the most increase in prices. You could pick them up for £90,000 a few years ago. They're 110, 115 now, but still rent well and really desirable. I mean, there's been a move away from tenement 2-bedroom style properties. Both for tenants wanting them and investors wanting them. So 100% the mid terrace or end terrace properties, 2 bedrooms, small garden, driveway, rental £900 to £1,000. It's good.
How are your LHA rates there in Dundee with the council, with the universal credit and stuff like that? What are you getting for, like, say, 3-bedroom rate? Any off the top of your head? I mean,
yes, I think it's been £700 and £800 for the, depending on the. I mean, it's difficult to work out now. It's not just the bedroom rate and what they qualify, but yeah, a typical 415 for a 2-bedroom, and then up to the £700-800 for a 3-bedroom, and I think it's capped after that depending on the tenancies for 4 beds and so on. But yeah, we have a lot of universal credit properties, and they were unaffected by COVID almost. They were some of our landlords. Some of the best portfolios. Some of our landlords have got a real mix of everything, but they certainly performed well over the lockdown period.
Yeah, it's one of the areas where, like, I certainly feel like moving forward, I'm going to buy more kind of universal credit type style properties. That market, I feel, is pretty safe. In fact, if you can get over your, some people are a bit apprehensive because they seem to kind of tag universal credit tenants with problems, which I just think is a bit narrow-minded. But there you go.
We've got some, a lot of good portfolio landlords with universal credits. And I think if you've got more than sort of 10, 15 properties, you're almost become immune. Then you just have to, live with the fact that you're always going to have maybe one property empty. You might have one property with arrears problems, but if you factor that over your portfolio, it works very well. It's a safe situation.
Cool.
Just really quickly, a couple of these are our 2 newest properties that came on. Just I say this last couple of months, I thought I would just throw them in there. 2 properties that we took on, not bought recently by the owners, so I can't give you the actual purchase price if that was the case. In both these instances, the landlords lived in them, they've moved out, and just really comes back to if you're investing, good quality, always rents first. So 2 properties and one in Exchange Court and Thornton Way is City Quay, which is what I mentioned earlier. You can maybe just see the Tay Road Bridge in the background of the photograph there, just to the right of November. So that's City Quay. That's it's seen a good rise in value recently as well because of the V&A and so on. And again, not steady yields, but just a good safe investment. The lowest rent, and then you're limiting your void periods and so on, which helps. If you work that into yield factor now, which people previously didn't do, with the short assured tenancy, they were assuming 12 month periods, 12-month lets with a PRT lease. I think you need to work that factor into your yields over the year.
Cool.
So just finishing off there with Dundee, I think we've kind of covered that just over the course of the chart there, but just really the consistent the consistency of Dundee, and we've never seen that inflation that you've had in Edinburgh and London. Even after the recession 2008, our prices weren't massively inflated, and so it just makes it a good solid city to invest in.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that. That was brilliant. Really good. Learned a lot there. Interesting.
Superb, Jack. Thank you very much for sharing. We've got a couple of questions came through while we were chatting there. The first one from Jim Parker was saying, how easy is it to get an HMO granted in Dundee, and what is the occupancy rate like in them?
So say that again.
So how easy is it to get an HMO license granted in Dundee, and what's the kind of occupancy rate?
HMO in Dundee is we probably could have an evening's conversation on it and that, but ultimately relatively easy if you buy the right property in the right area. The situation I'm saying that is we have over provision areas in Dundee, so they only grant a certain amount of licenses in certain areas. So you have to check that first before you purchase the property. That's the most important thing. If you bought a property, in some areas of West End where the university meet the local residents, that they've already reached that saturation point. Once you're okay with, once you know there's a license available in that area, then Dundee is one of the stricter areas in terms of the legislation that you to get a license, in terms of the physical stuff you've got to do with the property. And then obviously you've got to go to the license committee and put your point across that you're a good landlord. But I mean, fairly easy if if you're a first-time buyer, you certainly would be happy to chat in more detail about it. But the most critical thing with HMOs at this stage, and the people think about them, is just to check the census output area, that you are allowed to have a license in that area. But 3 beds are one of the easier ones to get, and again, the reasons we said before, they're still the most desirable. In terms of groups of students looking for 3, 4, and 5s, there's more 3-bed groups looking than there are other bigger groups.
Super. Thanks for that.
Can you stop sharing your screen, Jack?
Yeah, I was trying to do that when the question came in. I'm going to...
Are you all right to stick about, Jack, or do you need to shoot off now?
I'm good to hang about if required, yeah.
Cool. Now, just in case anybody wants to chip in at the end with any more questions, but obviously, if you need to go and do some calls or that, because if you're on call, there might be some emergencies to attend to. So, but we can get you back on later. Right. Okay, that's great. Kessar, do you want to come on and give us a wee talking to?
Of course, Nick. Yeah, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, mate.
Okay, guys, how long do I have?
As long as you want.
If you can try and do about 15, 20 minutes, then that leaves us 10 minutes at the end to get a wee bit of chat going. Guys, can I remind you, everybody who's on, if anybody would be happy to come on, we're trying to get a little bit more engagement here on these sessions. So if anybody would feel comfortable coming on camera and giving us a wee win, something positive that's happened to you this year, if it's a deal that you've managed to pick up, to give us all a little bit of just a bit of hope, because I think there's been a lot of doom and gloom. There's been a lot of kind of people struggling to find deals. So if anybody's got deals to share, or else some sort of win where they've sold a property and made a decent profit, then come on at the end. Just drop your name in the chat. We'll get you on. But we'll let Kessar give us a wee chat now. That's brilliant, Kes.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, it sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's wins. Right, guys. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So I do invest in Dundee as well. It is my hometown. I've lived here, I think it's about the same amount of time as Jack. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic area. So Jack's kind of covered most of the points on Dundee, but just kind of cover it from my side as well. So it is the fourth largest city. I do feel it does get overlooked, especially kind of from the central belt point of view, and even Aberdeen and stuff like that. It's got a lot of famous things going for it as well. It's famous for the Beano Dandy, biomedical research, got quite a big gaming industry as well, they invented Lemmings here, Grand Theft Auto 2, and there still is actually quite a lot of games companies, down on the waterfront and stuff like that. So it is still pretty good area, and apps and stuff like that too. For me, investing in Dundee, one of the reasons why I really like it is the strong fundamentals. Jack said already, 2 universities, college. I think it's got a decent job market here, good transport links in regards to roads. You can hit kind of all the other major cities quite easily. We're on the East Coast Main Line, so we can get to Edinburgh quite quickly, up to Aberdeen, and then all the way down to London as well. We do have an airport, quite a small airport, but, we do have flights down to London and a few other areas. It keeps changing from time to time. Housing market is fairly stable. So, prices haven't gone as crazy as other areas. So like we've seen kind of Glasgow's really hot just now, Edinburgh as well. Aberdeen's been kind of slightly up and down, whilst I feel like Dundee's kind of been sort of slow and steady. Which has been really good all the way since kind of the last financial crash. What I did feel was that the property market in Dundee did kind of slightly overheat just at the tail end of the, sort of 2007, 2008. And there are some people that are in kind of negative equity from them. But overall, apart from that, prices kind of rose steadily all the way through and still continue to as well. I feel there's a lot going for it compared to kind of the local surrounding areas as well. So Perth city centre has kind of been in a slight decline, I would say. Sorry to offend anybody from Perth, and also Angus as well. I don't think Angus is got as much going for it as Dundee, especially from the jobs market side of things. So I do have one property in Angus. Used to have a few. I'm trying to kind of sell all of them now and kind of stick to mainly Dundee. Huge generation in the area as well, down at the waterfront. Obviously we've kind of mentioned the V&A already, but that was only part of, one of lots of different projects that are happening down at the waterfront. So we're only kind of halfway through the regeneration. There's still a lot more to happen. They're going to get an urban beach. They've brought kind of like electric kind of higher bikes that they're getting and stuff like that. So a lot of cool things happening down there. We was in for the City of Culture Award and we came second place for that. We've got the UNESCO City of Design and obviously the V&A, which does bring quite a lot of people to the area. We got some awards recently as well. The best live to live in the UK and the coolest city in the UK by GQ magazine. I'm a little bit wary of these two awards because I do live in Dundee and I love the place myself. But again, take them with a slight pinch of salt. I don't think it's necessarily any better than any other city.
Should have got you on the front cover, mate, on the GQ magazine.
Yeah. I know. But yeah, like I said, take that with a little pinch of salt. But overall, good publicity for the local area. And ultimately, I think there's a different feel about Dundee just now, especially kind of through lockdown, kind of walking down to the V&A bit, all the kind of the young hipsters were around and stuff like that. We've got a lot more, cool restaurants opening up, hotels, bars and stuff like that. It's definitely kind of changing for the better. Overall, good rental demand and yield when it comes to property investment. And kind of last thing as well is that we are going to, the kind of talks of an Eden project. I don't know that much about what Eden project is, but, it's a huge thing. And there's only one in the UK. And there's talks about potentially another one, and it's going to be in Dundee, but that's not been officially confirmed yet. Dundee does have its problems too. It's not a perfect place. We do have high drug use in Dundee as well. So, investing in the right areas is key. And also there is kind of, quite a lot of poverty in certain areas as well. So I just want to kind of cover off some of my top tips for investing in Dundee. I think location is key. It's quite a small place and there are a lot of rental properties out there. People can be picky when it comes to, where to stay. One property that I've got is a great property. It's on Lockheed Road. It's kind of one of the more modern properties, if anybody knows Dundee, like the kind of the S-Bend bit, but it doesn't have parking and it's not really kind of near anything. And I find for that reason, it kind of struggles to rent. So I think people kind of want to kind of stay in the mix, whether it be schools or shops or good transport links or parking and stuff like that. And if you don't have some of that stuff, you might, your property might be slightly slower renting it out. Individual streets in areas kind of vary massively. Some areas in the past have been known as being rougher than other areas and stuff like that. But in all areas, I feel like, certain streets are worse than others. My local area where I grew up and most of my properties is Stubbswell. And even there, so there's a street called Dundonald Street and it's like a war zone, all the streets, all the shops have kind of been boarded up and stuff like that. There's cameras on the streets. There's a lot of drug takers there in the area.
Jeez, okay, so I never had you down as a boy from the scheme, mate.
Yeah, well, not quite a scheme, but yeah. Yeah. I just tried to put this posh voice on for pretend. But to be honest, I'll cover Dundee a bit more. I'll cover Stubbswell and another bit. But fantastic area to invest if you're investing in the right street when it comes to, even like Jack has said earlier on, Baxter Park Terrace, the properties, the flats there are about 120 grand. On the opposite side of the street, they're about half the price on Baldovan Terrace and stuff like that. So huge prices, differences from street to street. Flats to houses as well, what to invest. I would say, as with any area in Dundee, in Scotland, yields are better in flats. For the people that are chasing the deals, you're more likely to get a deal in a flat. Houses are in high demand from property investors, but also kind of first-time buyers as well, especially like the ex-council houses. So you're less likely to get a deal on them. And as Jack was saying, the prices have really jumped up on the houses recently. 3-bed ex-council houses you were getting for about sort of 105, 110, even a year or two ago. And now they're kind of pushing the 130, and a couple have sold for just over, around 140 recently as well. How many bedrooms? I would say 1-bedroom properties rent really well. So just kind of give a background as well. I don't have any city centre properties. So like kind of the area that Jack was covering, mainly most of mine are in kind of Stubbswell and all these other kind of schemes of areas. But yeah, 1-bedroom properties do rent really well. 2 bedrooms, I feel there's an oversupply of 2-bedroom compared to other types of properties. They will rent really well, but potentially slightly slower than the other properties. And 3 and 4 bedroom properties rent really well as well. You'd said earlier on, Nick, about the LHA rates as well. So, we benefited from the LHA rate increase, back in, I think, March or April. So 1 beds only went up slightly by, from 340 to 364, but 2 beds went from 450 to 498. So that was a decent jump. 3 beds really jumped up. So 550 to 648. So that was a real good jump. And 4 beds was a huge increase from 819 to up to 1,047. So
wow, sounds similar to Glasgow, actually.
Yeah, it is very similar to Glasgow, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely. Talking about kind of Glasgow, a key difference from Dundee to Glasgow is like communal blocks, especially like the tenement style buildings. What you'll see if you go to Glasgow, the factoring, and I know a lot of people complain about factoring, the costs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of Dundee doesn't have factoring, so especially the old tenement blocks, a lot of them can be run down. And if you've not got active investors or homeowners there, you will see kind of roof issues, leaky downpipes, broken secure entry, stuff like that. So, looking at the communal blocks when you're buying is a key thing. And if you do get in there and try to make improvements to the property, and there are grants available as well towards heat, lighting, and towards secure entry, but it can be difficult to rally everybody together as well, to be honest. So that's something to kind of factor in. Differences in Dundee compared to some other areas as well, like the Central Belt. We don't have any like private sector leasing schemes like mayors or PSL, the private sector leasings, that sort of thing.
This is for the asylum seekers, Mears Group.
Just anything, like even like in Edinburgh and and kind of the Lothian areas, you've got the PSL scheme where they'll it's guaranteed rent, or asylum seekers, vulnerable people, that sort of stuff. We don't have any sort of guaranteed rental scheme. Dundee does have an empty home scheme, and they are really good, but all they do is kind of more like a tenant fine scheme for people that are on benefits, but they don't actually kind of offer you a guaranteed rent. So that's something to kind of factor in. I suppose people looking in the area as well and asking, home reports and what should I be offering on compared to home reports. So what I would say, obviously just now, the market is really hot, and it is hot in most of Scotland, to be honest. But typically sort of properties I see kind of sell around the home report. Areas like sort of West End of Dundee, kind of what Jack was kind of covering, city centre, that sort of stuff. And Broughty Ferry, which is kind of quite a nice area to live in. They tend to go over home report, whilst the rest of Dundee kind of around about the home report area, price. And if it is kind of a rundown property, maybe kind of, below home report. Another thing that Dundee's got, I don't necessarily know if other areas have this, is the empty homes tax. So if your property is empty for over 12 months, the council start to charge you double council tax as well. So that's been quite good for property investors because it's brought properties onto the market. But it's also need to factor that in if you're buying a property, because you might need to pay double council tax until you get the property done up, depending on what state it is when you buy it, because you inherit the same sort of exemption. And if they've already gone over the 12 months, you might kind of hit into that as well. Rundown properties I find are in really high demand. There was a 1-bedroom property that went on for sale recently, and it went way over the home report. Properties in kind of Broughty Ferry, rundown properties in Broughty Ferry, I've seen properties go 50, 60, 70k above the home report, just because people are really kind of dying to get these type of rundown properties. So I find it really difficult to get, people wanting to do the BRR strategy. There's loads of investors looking for them. And a lot of times I don't even bother bidding on them type of properties because I know there's going to be 20, 30 offers on these types. Sorry, you was going to say something, Nick?
No, I was just agreeing with you. It's all very familiar, mate. Same
yeah,
here.
so I suppose it's probably familiar to other areas as well.
Yeah.
Service accommodation, you was asking about that. What's kind of the opportunities there? I do have a holiday let property in Dundee. It's just kind of in the outskirts in Wellbank. What I would say is, and I know lots of guys that do it in the city centre as well, they do fairly well. Obviously, COVID has kind of had some disadvantages from a service accommodation point of view, but also some advantages as well, and some people have done actually really well out of that. And speaking to other investors, especially kind of people investing in Edinburgh and stuff like that, who've been hit, by there not being a fringe and tourism and stuff like that, Dundee's actually done quite well out of it. Legislation-wise, Dundee Council is still fairly lenient when it comes to that. But my property, I did buy a main door property. Obviously regulation is going to come in soon. And, if you've got shared access, I don't necessarily know if you would be granted that in the future. And lastly, so LHA rates, we've already kind of covered that. So just wanted to cover off a couple of deals that I've done over the last year. So this was an ex-council flat in the Douglas area. I managed to buy it below the ADS threshold, so 39,999. Kind of shows my costs there, for the refurb. It's a full refurb one. It's a really rundown property, but it is non-standard construction, this one. So managed to get an up value to 67,000. But obviously, with it being non-standard construction, I'm getting a lower loan to value and a higher interest rate as well. What I would say about this type of property, so the ex-council flats in sort of the schemes, you just got to be very careful in kind of the blocks that you're buying and stuff like that. And, because sometimes you don't have control of the other tenants that are there. And I have had problems with this property in the past. So I don't think it's one for the faint-hearted. You've got to ideally get somebody that is local to that area to kind of live there and sort of gel with the rest of the people there.
So anytime I see a non-standard construction property, I just bypass it. But you've just said there that you managed to get the mortgage on it at 65%. So there are obviously products out there, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's lots of different varying degrees of non-standard construction as well. I would personally stay away from any non-standard construction property that is classed as defective. So if you can look on the Housing Act and it shows you which properties are defective, but there's loads of properties out there, even like ex-council houses, you know, that made of wimpy, no fines, stuff like that, that are absolutely fine. Were kind of built just post-war and still standing today. So that property, the previous one that I was showing you there, that was kind of concrete block and it's absolutely fine. You know, it's really solid, and I think it'll be there kind of for many, many years to come. But just unfortunately, lenders class that as non-standard. But it does limit your lending options available, to be honest. So that's something to factor in. So this is my local area, Stubbswell. This is a property that I bought again, you know, below the ADS threshold. 38,000 was a purchase price. If you can see in the bottom picture there, it was kind of damp. So that was putting off a lot of people. I went around with my damp guy. We checked it all out. It was actually just kind of surface mold. It looked actually like the guy was using this as a kind of a cannabis farm. And this is kind of all condensation and stuff like that. Because when we got the electricians out to do the EICR, they'd put a copper pipe in for, you know, the fuse box. So so again, another area not for the faint-hearted, maybe.
Free electricity.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think to stop it from tripping was the thing that they did that. But yeah, I've had properties in the past where people have tried to bypass the electric as well, and you know, on the showers and stuff.
They're cracking deals, mate. They're great numbers, by the way. Cracking deals.
Yeah, no, there is. Yeah. And to be fair, I don't want to kind of say that all my deals are like that because the next one isn't, you know, because I don't want people to think I really need to get a deal like this every time investing in Dundee, because I think I was very lucky with these two, to be honest. But this was a money in, money out deal. I actually got $7,500 back out of the deal as well, which is absolutely fantastic. And it rents out for $450 a month, which it doesn't say there. But again, you know, it's next to the local school and stuff like that. So, you know, and the lady that stays there, she loves it. So yeah. Most of my properties are flats, you know, so I've tried to kind of diversify now and buy some houses. So this is one of my latest purchases as well, was an ex-council house in Kirkton. I would say Kirkton's slightly lower value than some of the other council estates in Dundee. It does have some really rough bits though, so you know, just again, street by street does vary. But this is kind of a $67,500 purchase price. I'm still in the process of, you know, coming up to the 6-month point for me to do the revaluation, but I'm hoping that will revalue back at 75. But it only needed a quick spruce up, and that was it. And it rented out for 615. This was rented out kind of post lockdown, and to be honest, I had about 40 different inquiries, and I actually had to take it off the market because there was that many people looking to inquire. So yeah, shows you some deals that are potentially out there.
Awesome.
And that was it. Just a whistle-stop tour of Dundee.
Great stuff. Jack and Kessar, if you want to leave your details in the chat as well, because people can copy and paste or else download the chat so that you've got all the, you've got a file saved there as well. You can do that, guys. So yeah, that was brilliant. Thanks very much. So guys, we are going to leave 10 minutes at the end for questions and a wee bit of kind of chat back and forth, but I think it would be great to hear back from some of our listeners, or at least one of our listeners, because we're probably a bit short on time. So I think, Stephen, who are we going to hear from?
I did see someone mention a deal they want to share in Dundee.
Yeah, we want to give some positivity, end on a high note. So I think Fenella, are you there? Would you like to come on? We can unmute you, and if you wouldn't mind sharing your... Oh.
Hi.
Hi there. Thanks for coming on and sharing your win in Dundee, which is kind of fitting as well.
Yeah, well, Dundee is our main investment area, and this is actually it's a win really in terms of valuation, because we bought it. It's a 1-bed flat near the Baxter Park area that was mentioned. We bought it for 42,000 with cash. We did a sort of I think it was a 10 to 12,000 refurb on it, and we thought at the time that our figures were it was just going to value up at 62, 63, but we also knew the stairwell, like a lot of these properties in Dundee, they're not factored, so the stairwell was in a terrible state. And so I actually took it on myself during lockdown to get all the owners together so that we could actually get, well, we're hoping to get an entry door system, but the first phase was actually to get the whole stairwell repainted, repaired. And just the initial, I knew that to get the valuation on the property, if we actually had the stairwell looking great, It was a bit of extra work on my part, but because you're sharing the cost between all the flats, it was like £300 each.
How many owners are we talking about in the group in the block?
There's eight flats.
How many did you get on board? Because that can be, from past experience, that can be a real struggle.
We got them all, everybody, because we want to do an entry door system. I can see Kessar's smiling there because he's
Is he one of the owners?
He's one of my age. It was the first time I actually met Kessar. Well, I haven't actually ever physically met him in person, but we emails back and forth. But so actually, to get the awards and grants from the council, you have to have 100% on board. Our big problem at the moment is that the council aren't doing any inspections because of COVID. It will happen, but so we thought then, rather than waiting to do the paintwork all in one thing, we're doing phases. So we did the paintwork. So actually for us on this flat, although we thought the valuation would be around about the 62, 63, it came back as a valuation of 70.
Fantastic,
so
well done.
We were really chuffed. And I personally think having the stairwell repainted, that initial, rather than the graffiti and the chunks out the wall, and our flat is actually the top floor. So the valuer, he had quite a few floors to walk up, smelling fresh paint all the way until he got to the top.
Tell you what, you did well getting money out of Kessar anyway. That was the biggest one. That was fantastic. So like, run through the figures again, Frella. So you purchased for 42. How much did you spend on the renovation?
It's about 12 and a half.
Excellent.
So that takes you, so we knew that we would be leaving money in the deal. I think the sort of MIMO type thing, we don't work, we try to get as close to that, but we're realistic that, MIMOs aren't really, I call them near-mos, they're nearly there, they're not quite.
Tell us, what is this terminology? You'll need to enlighten us. I'm lost with you here. What is this? Nemo? Nemo? I thought that was the fish.
It's money, money in, money out.
Mimo, right? Mimo.
So whatever money you put in on valuation, you're pulling out from the deal.
Right. Okay. So we call it the BRRR strategy. That's the BRRR. It's the same thing. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay.
Your money in, money out, but we find that we can't always get that, so we're leaving money in the deal. And actually, for this one, we've left about £4,000 in the deal, which is fine. I would say
that was a result. That's great.
Yeah, it was rented. Is actually, this was all during lockdown, and just before the actual refurb was done very quickly, and we actually had several people looking at it before it was finished. So they moved in just the beginning of March time, I think. So it was at the time during lockdown, everybody was saying how awful valuations were, people were being downvalued, and we started to get a little bit concerned, thinking, this if we're downvalued, that we'll be leaving a lot more in the deal. But actually, because I think we did the extra work in the stairwell, and of course it's a nicely refurbed flat.
Did you manage to sweet talk the surveyor at all? Have you got any tips there on dealing with surveyors?
Well, I have to say, whenever we do valuations, my husband sends me out to talk to them, because I always seem to whenever I talk to the guys, we seem to end up with a better valuation than.
I'll come here in the background here, Nick, and say, absolutely. I send Fenella out. I stay out the way.
If you went out, you would have got 60 grand. You wouldn't have got the 70 grand.
Yeah, no, I do seem to find that if I'm left to talk to the guys, I somehow manage to get better valuations than.
It's the female touch, definitely.
It's not. These one-bed flats are great. The figures are very tight. I think, like a lot of people find, when you get into the bigger projects, obviously you get more wiggle room. So for us, it was a very good valuation for us. So we were
good. Well done, and it's great to hear a positive story. There's been a lot of doom and gloom, so thank you for sharing that. And I think myself personally, I've had a pretty bad year of it. I've only picked up one buy-to-let, so not been that productive. But listening to Stephen, he's done amazingly well. Listening to other people on the Scottish Property Podcast Facebook group who have been posting their deals, it gives me the hope that I can do better next year. So thanks very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's a cracking deal. Thanks for sharing.
Guys, we're going to wrap up in 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left. So if any of you would like to ask any questions to our panel tonight, Arshad, Jack or Kessar, please get your questions in. We've had a few comments, I think, more comments rather than questions coming in. Stephen, I don't know if there's any. I think there was some mortgage. Can we go right back to the start? I think there was some, Kessar, there was some mortgage questions right back at the start. That'll give people some time to chip in with their questions. Any issues you're having at all, guys?
Yeah, no worries, Nick. I think I've answered most of them already, but Ian Daly had asked about, what's the minimum valuation that, you can get a mortgage on. So typically on buy-to-lets, it's 50K. There is one lender at the moment that's doing it kind of below 50K, but for most sort of lending, 50K and above is where you need to be. So together is probably your only option just now, below 50K, but all the mainstream lenders come at 50K or above. So that's either the purchase price or the valuation, whichever one's lower.
Okay, let's just free chat for a couple of minutes then, guys. What do you reckon? 2021, where is the market going? Prediction time. Because what we'll do is we'll go back on all the predictions and see who's correct. Like this time next year, we'll go back and see if anybody predicted it right. I just think that, God, there's been that much support by the government. It's pretty hard to see how things will crash. I just think that, you look at obviously the high street collapsing. Me and Stephen were talking about this, retail hugely affected, hospitality, these sectors, these industries really affected. But if you look at the majority of the workforce, like Arcadia, 13,000 jobs at risk over the whole UK. But how many of them are actually going to be, purchasing property? Do you know what I mean? Probably a large amount of them are, 13,000 jobs, possibly like, low income, probably renters more than anything else, I would say. I don't know what the rest of you have got a view on that. I just can't see any crash as such. I think things will possibly slow down a wee bit, after this kind of rush to beat the stamp duty thing ends at the 31st of March. Guys, want to chip in with any comments? Arshad, you're always good for a wee bit of a market prediction.
Yeah, just with regards to what sort of Savills was saying, they're saying that 2020, they expect 4% prices to be higher, whereas for 2021, they expect zero growth.
Zero.
Overall.
You reckon it'll flatline? Do you agree with that?
Well, personally, so as an investor, right, it's different because I typically add value to the property. So I get it at a discount, add value. So it really doesn't make too much impact on me other than maybe the what do you call it, the end valuations. However, if you're a developer or if you are have got a different model, you have to be a bit more careful with regards to what the end values are going to do. There is a lot of support up until March 2021, because that's where the stamp duty freeze has been agreed to just now. Yeah. But beyond that, you have to be really careful if you're looking to, if your exit is to sell, if your exit is to rent, refinance, then I would just say crack on ahead. Just be mindful with the numbers that you get, but just crack on, because what is, typically property is a 20-year investment, if not generational. So, a drop in a couple of thousand is probably a year or two's cash flow. Yeah. So for me, it's not going to stop me. I picked one up in August, one in September, and one in 4 days' time.
Good man. I think a lot of the people that are kind of like holding off and saying, should I wait? I think you're going to look back in 2 years' time, I think you're going to be like, wow, I've missed the opportunity there, because possibly coming up from springtime, it's going to be a small window of opportunity where things will calm down. But I think going into 2022, I think things are going to explode.
I think, Nick, it'd be a good one, because Stephen, you've got a great story about when you spoke to an investor at an event. I think it'd be brilliant if you kind of told the guys on here that one, if you remember.
I'm just looking to make sure he's not on the call. Yeah, I spoke to an investor about 4 years ago that I'd met probably 10 years previous to that. So in the 6-year gap that I hadn't kind of been at networking events, and spoke to him. He had kind of slowed his growth down his portfolio, and he did say, he says, "Oh, what's your plan now with what you were looking at?" And say 4 years ago, the market was starting to hot up a little bit. There was a lot of sales over the home report, and at the time, I thought, do you know what, you were making more profit in flipping than you were in holding, because you were getting 15% over the asking price. So I started flipping properties, and I think it was some like 15 or 16 flips I'd done before I spoke to him 2 years later, and he says, and his opinion on the market was, no, it's getting a bit hot. I'm going to stay still. I'm going to just wait and see what happens with the market. And I thought that was very interesting, that a really, really experienced investor, someone that I respected their opinion of, made me a little bit nervous of what I was actually doing. And he said he was looking to kind of stay still. And obviously 2 years later, I'd completed on a whole lot of deals and flips, and he was kind of still staying still. And I'm thinking, well, I think and I have that conversation with Nick quite often as well. I do believe that in property, there's so many different strategies you can. I think it's not to be too structured. If something doesn't go your right way and you get undervalued or you get overvalued, you can sell it, or if the market hottens up or whatever happens, you can pivot and change. In property, you can hold, you can sell, you can do what you like. So yeah, I think you can make money in a downward market, upward market, stable market. So that's my
pick your strategy, stick to your strategy, stick to your numbers. You might not get all your money back out, like Fenella said there, but just I think there's just opportunities, and I've been guilty of having the fear this year. Honestly, I'm a bit disappointed. I've not had the mindset to plough ahead. And, the cash is sat in the bank there doing absolutely bugger all. And I'm annoyed at myself because it has sat there. So
I'm annoyed at me not taking it off you this year. Excuse me.
You did give me some opportunities as well. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it, man. So
yeah, I tried to twist
shame on me. Shame.
Just on that point, sort of Nick has kind of pointed out, one thing you need to remember, guys, is it's your own journey. I know when we come on to things like this, you hear people and you see people flying. I mean, I'll share one right now. So the one I picked up in August, we've pulled away the flooring, and there's dry rot, wet rot, structural. The joists are an absolute riot. So, it's not all sort of, sunshines and rainbows. Like, for instance, every property you pick up is a problem. It's not a problem in the sense that you can't handle it, you can't deal with it, but you're going to have to solve this problem in order to make money. And Nick, for instance, you've just had, you're talking about the baby, so it's understandable why you might not want to take on the extra problems that come with property. So I'm not advising you against it. I'm just saying it's your own journey. So don't beat yourself up when you see someone going off, keys jangling on Facebook, they picked up number 10 this year kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Neil Robb's chipped in here. I guess, I think most of us are hopefully predicting, a bullish market next year. But Neil Robb, he always likes to put things, a little bit back into the kind of reality. So, yeah, we are facing a £400 billion black hole. The government's obviously put out this, huge amounts of money and all that, which is going to need to be repaid at some point. But let's just leave our kids to sort that out, and the next generation.
Great grandkids.
Yeah. So higher taxes, probably. That might be the next thing. Negative interest rates. Who knows, guys? Who knows? But I think it's important not to get too bogged down and continue with your...
Yeah, absolutely. And just while Kessar was actually giving this presentation, I was looking at the weekly. We get a weekly notification of the downloads. And we've kind of got over a little bit of lull, and it was kind of just making me think and reflect on 2020. And I'm pretty sure Nick will be the same, that I think without this podcast and without the group and the community around us and all these calls on monthly calls, 2020 would have been a very much more difficult year, I think. What about you, Nick?
Sorry, I was just reading the chat comments there. What was the question?
I was sharing a nice sentiment there and you've just ruined it. You know what? You can listen to it back to in the recording.
I'm really sorry, mate. Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for all your support. Is that what you were hinting at? Giving a thank you to the listeners?
Yes, a thank you for kind of getting everyone through a difficult 2020 and how this podcast has helped us kind of get through it.
Yeah, we were saying we wish we'd taken out shares and Zoom back out when we started our subscriptions, but it's been good connecting with everybody, just, getting people on like Safanella, all the private messages we get, all the messages of support, all the shares in the podcast group. It's the community that makes it as well. So yeah, big hats off to all you guys, and we wish you a prosperous 2021. Thanks very much to our panel of guests, Jack, Kessar, Arshad. Everybody has chipped in tonight, and we'll look forward to connecting with you all in the Facebook group.